Hi, are you underselling yourself? And by that, are you underpricing? Or you're not telling people that you're good enough? Or do you get to a certain level of income when you just won't let yourself go above that? This may be in your own business, or it may be that you won't pitch yourself to get to the new job. It happens in many different ways, but many people have a level where they just won't let themselves go above. So I'm going to give you an example, a real case study from a client I worked with who had this problem. And when we discovered, or I helped them uncover really, where it came from, and everybody who has any behaviour, they do any behaviour they don't like, there's always a reason, so you can always uncover it. And we uncovered it within about 45 minutes. And they were quite shocked. And the reason they were shocked is because they were limiting their business, and it had nothing to do with business. It was way back in their past, and it was all to do with some seemingly random family stuff. And they put a ceiling on their business. They couldn't allow themselves to earn more than a certain amount of money per month. And it was a good amount of money. In their industry, they were doing well because they were doing everything else really well. But when it came to going through this glass ceiling that they'd unconsciously set, they couldn't break through, and it was frustrating them. And they felt very uncomfortable, very confused. And it took about 45 minutes to find out why, and it didn't take long for them to break it once they knew. So this is a typical pattern. People have an unconscious limit of what they're allowed to earn, how much they can price themselves for, how many people they can work with. It could be in different ways, or as I said, if you're employed, it may be a limit on, I can't go to that next level of employment. I can't get to whatever it happens to be. So employed or self-employed, doesn't matter. The process and the principle is pretty much the same. So this person was working hard in their business, had a great reputation. They were doing all the things really well. They had great marketing. They had a great product. They had happy clients. But every month they hit a limit. And as soon as they hit a limit, they started to lose sales. They messed up sales calls, and they actually said, it's almost like I'm sabotaging my sales calls. Well, they were, because they'd hit a limit which unconsciously they wouldn't allow themselves to go beyond. So that seems a bit crazy, but it's not crazy. It's just a way the brain works sometimes, where you've hit a limit of something else which is more important, but often we don't know why. So I'm working with salespeople, for example. They're great at selling the product or the service they're selling, but they can't sell themselves because it's arrogant or it's big-headed. Or they could be too successful. And this is the case for this client. Going over a certain amount of money, which, when we examined it, was an arbitrary amount. They had got to this limit, and this limit had been the threshold where their brain had said, well, that's just too much. Now, the interesting thing is it could have been £1,000 more, it could have been £1,000 less, it could have been 10,000 more or 10,000 less, but they'd set one without really realising it. But what happened was, every time they got there, bong, they hit their head on this ceiling, this glass ceiling. Because a part of their brain said, you can't have any more. You don't deserve it. You are not good enough for that. You can't cope with it. These are the things that people say in the back of their mind. Now, for this particular client, it was all about having too much. And if they were too successful, they would be not a good boy because they would be being greedy. So in this case, it's all about greed. Now, as I said, everyone's different. And I first heard this person, we were on a training call, on a training we were both on. And I could hear the coach directing them to think about things in certain ways. And I was pulling my hair out going, I know I can help you. And I contacted this person and said, give me some time, I guarantee I can find it. And then they became a client. And for them, what it came down to, in their family, when they were very much younger, they were basically taught to be nice, to not be greedy, to not show up the family. And I'm being careful here in terms of circumstance because of privacy. But they were taught to be a good boy who's not greedy, cares about others, and that was the root cause. So the thing is, a lot of people think there has to be a trauma, there has to be a problem, there has to be some huge loss, and all of these happen. I worked with somebody else who made a lot of money and lost it all again, and that's why they underpriced themselves. But in this case, it was actually because they had a great upbringing. And this is when it gets confusing for a lot of people, because there was nothing in their past to make them go, I had this terrible experience, which I can sort of understand why I'm like this. So when we found out it was actually because being too successful means they're a bad boy because they're greedy. Ultimately, that was it. As soon as they understood it, it was like, wow. And I call it an oops moment, because a client many, many years ago said, oops, when they found out what it was. So years ago, they were trained, conditioned by great parents, or, if you want to put it another way, had good morals and brought them up well, but accidentally they got trained and conditioned to not be too greedy. And they picked this sum of money, which was an okay, good sum of money, but way below what they're capable of doing. And then what happened was, that was the glass ceiling. Because every time they got close to it, which was pretty much every month, because they were good at what they did, they had great marketing, they had great customer satisfaction, they were good, they keep hitting this limit, and they kept sabotaging it, because being a bad boy in the eyes of his parents was more important. So, accidentally sabotaging his business because actually he was a decent guy. So it didn't take long to take that out, because he's still a decent guy, but just doing better now financially and running a better business without corrupting this, thing of, being a bad person, because really that was all about something when they were much younger and nothing to do with business. But this is what often happens. Something we learn years ago, either a trauma, but often an accidental thing that happens. And in this case, a good thing about being a good person, years later, gets in the way, and people undersell themselves. They underprice themselves, they underpromote themselves, they don't go to the level they could be. And this is what we then call sabotage thinking, or a sabotage loop. So sometimes it's a bit confusing. Sometimes it's hard to tell where it comes from. And they were puzzled, and they were asking this coach. I was listening to this with the rest of the group, and I'm thinking, I know how to find it, and it's very easy. Guarantee it within the first 2 hours whenever we're working with somebody. And it's just a few weeks just to get the conditioning out. And boom, guess what? They sailed through this glass ceiling, because it's gone, because they had good marketing and systems, and they just allowed themselves to do what they were already capable of. And that's the interesting thing. They were already capable of it, they were just getting their own way and sabotaging it. All because being a good person who's not too greedy was more important than earning this money. But it was nothing to do with that. They were still a good person, and they could earn more money in their business and help more people. And that was the thing. They were sabotaging the amount of people they could actually help. So they had a huge desire to help more people, and they were very genuine about that. But because of this being too greedy, actually sabotaged how many people they could help. So nobody won. Nobody won at all. And then what happened is, stayed a good person, helped more people, earned more money, and everyone was happy. There was no problem. All because of something that happened when they were younger. So if you're getting in your own way in any way, shape or form, you want to tell people how good you are. You've got imposter syndrome, you're underpricing, you're underpromoting. That was my one. I didn't like telling people I was good at what I did. Some people, it was a fear of being called arrogant, or judgment, or criticism, or I'm not good enough. All of these things can be dealt with in a very short period of time. And if you don't know where it comes from, don't be surprised if it's not a trauma. Perhaps there is, perhaps there isn't, perhaps it's a tiny one, perhaps you had a bad upbringing, or it could be you had a great upbringing, which is even more confusing. Sometimes it happens something in a job 3 jobs ago, but often it happens back when we were kids. It doesn't take years of therapy, it doesn't take lots of massive introspection. It's just working out what you're doing, why you're accidentally sabotaging, and then turning it off. And that takes a few weeks, literally a few weeks. So hope this has been useful to you. Are you good at what you do, but you're underpricing yourself or underselling yourself or under-promoting yourself? If that's the case, and you think, I've had enough of this, please get in touch. There must be a button around here somewhere, wherever you're watching it. Get in contact. Let's have a conversation, and I'll show you how it can be done. Thanks for your time, and hope this has been useful to you. Take care.